check tes slides, Bécojo, le chat, man, c'est drôle.
J'ai mis ça last minute pour me déstresser.
C'est bon, c'est un bon mot. Je me demandais des questions comme d'avance, pour ceux qui sont là, pour avoir edge. Est-ce qu'on a besoin de source ou de regarder le source, ça nous donne un trop gros in?
Le GitHub, ça dit?
Ouais.
Ça change rien. Le code source est donné dans le challenge.
Ok, fait que c'est ça fait partie du challenge. Là.
Ouais. Ouais, ok, je vais le dire.
Ouais, pis dans le fond, ça a l'air d'être basé sur des modules open source, fait que c'est logique. Là. À partir du moment où tu figures dans Stacktrace ou whatever que c'est ça, t'as le droit d'aller checker le code.
Il y a littéralement une fonction là, dans le challenge que ça te donne le code source. Là.
Ok. Ah.
Source code. There you go.
I saw a visual of us and wouldn't let it go. I was driving for miles. Why'd you try to escape out the door? Doing 100 on the highway. You're like an animal, don't know your consequences. Oh, never let it get old. I keep it original. Bend over backwards.
All right.
Novelty. Another casual, let me get away. Slip through the cracks, trust you come.
Bonne question. On peut commencer là, je pense. Là, ceux qui arriveront, ils checkeront le lien.
Curiosity.
Okay. Hello, hi. My name is Benoit Côté-Jodoin. Today we will be working through the challenge math homeworks, challenge that I've designed for the NerdSec 2020 CTF. It is a challenge about Ruby deserialization. And from the feedback that I got at NordSec, I think not a lot of people actually work a lot with Ruby. I think for a lot of people, this was the first time interacting with the language. It really wasn't meant to be a Ruby-specific language challenge, in fact. So yeah, today I'll try to give you some tips and some hints to hopefully guide you towards the kind of solutions that is intended. And yeah, so hopefully it goes well. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them, I think, in the Discord channel. If you want to get started right now on the challenges, here are the URL and how to connect to them using Netcat. If you're interested in the challenge source files, they are up on my GitHub. You can look at them. It's not really a hint. The challenges will give you the source code of the challenges anyway. And the slide URL are at the bottom left corner. There's some code that might need some copy pasting here, so might be interested into looking into that. I recommended using the Docker container from Ruby, the official Ruby Docker container, version 2.7.1. This is what's running on the server. It also has everything you need to solve the challenges. OJ and OX, which are two of the libraries we'll be using today, they are written in C, and it's kind of annoying to compile them or install them sometimes. So if you have a Ruby environment, that's perfectly fine. Though for the last challenge, you need to be using a somewhat recent version, so 2.7 and 1 and up should be fine. Let's kind of just introduce the concept of serialization and deserialization, and like the few important notes that we have to keep in mind. So the process of serialization, it's when we take an object from a running program and try to translate it into a text format. And the goal is to be able to reconstruct this object at a later time. Now, when you serialize an object, not everything gets serialized. In the case of Ruby here, the only thing that we'll be saving is the class name and the instance variable. And in the case of like primitives, such as integers, booleans, they'll be usually handled on their own. Here we see the three libraries we'll be targeting today. So you can notice OJ is using some kind of JSON here. OX is based on XML, and Marshall, which is native to Ruby, is using some kind of binary format that's a bit more annoying to work with. The process of deserialization, well, it's about taking this text format and try to recreate the object out of it. Ruby really doesn't care if you change the types, the values, or whatever that's involved in the instance variables here. So any changes that you make on the deserialized input, deserialized, I guess, format, and that would be translated into an object will be reflected into the reconstructed object. And the deserialization process will not trigger any check or validation unless there is in the code that's actually calling the deserialization. If you were to deserialize in Ruby by hand, this is kind of how you would do it. So the first thing you would do is get a reference to the class object. In Ruby, everything is an object and everything inherits from object, and classes are also objects. And the first thing you do is try to instantiate it. Usually you would call new on this class to instantiate a new instance of that class. But that would call the constructor, and that's one thing that's important to realize when you deserialize an object. It is not calling any function nor the constructor. So in this case, I'm using allocate, which will just create the instance and not really initialize it or call anything. The next step in the process would be to initialize the instance variables. So here, let's just say in the format, we just end up having a hash here with key and values that we need to assign. And we'll be using this function instance variable set to actually set the instance variable on that object. And at the end of this whole process, we kind of get this object that's partially initialized and that the rest of the program can manipulate. This bit of code is also interesting when you're building a payload because usually you don't want to be really running the code that you're trying to build a payload to deserialize for. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Yeah, that's kind of all I had for the first challenge. I'm going to let, I don't know, 20 minutes-ish for you to work on it. It is somewhat easy, but there's actually multiple solutions for actually all the challenges today. So I encourage you to find alternate solutions. And yeah, that's all I have to say for now. See you in a bit.
Thanks, Benoit. So you can get started by looking at the link that was posted on Hackerspace on Discord, and it is also on the Twitch at the bottom. This on slide, well, you can see also right now on the screen netcat math.bcj.io port 1000. But you can also, there's the slide 3 has a link to all of the modules. So even if you finish quickly the first exercise, you can move on to the other ones. So without further ado, hack along. We encourage people to spread out on Discord if they want to have kind of a team work experience. We encourage also people, French speaking to group together if they prefer that way. So we highlight that now by using the FR or EN acronym behind our tables. This is fairly new. We're still adapting. So if you find it confusing, let us know. Or if you have a better idea, we're open to suggestions. Another thing that you should note is that it's very easy to switch between the tables and the live. But what you can do also is stick to a table and just follow along using Twitch. So have Twitch open and then jump on a table. This way, if Benoit starts giving hints or anything, you'll still have it through the music. It will come through. So this is the way I've done it last month, and it was pretty enjoyable, I would say. And questions are going to be in form of text. And if a question is a very good one, Benoit might address it by using voice. So we advise that you either follow the live channel with voice, with sound, or the Twitch. And in either case, you'll have the answer. Otherwise, we might also reply by text if it's something that has already been done, but don't be afraid of asking. I think I did all the housekeeping I wanted to do. So thanks again, Benoit, for the challenges, and have fun hacking.
Been walking along this road for so long now, thinking of ways to tell you I was sad. And then you called my phone and told me it was over. And I'm quite relieved that you thought we needed closure. 'Cause although we had the best days of our lives, some things they just don't last, and other things don't feel right. Because although we had the best years of our lives, some paths move so distant, and some stars lose their light. Been dragging my mind back before I met you. Remembering life and cutting our photos in two. And it's not that I want to forget what we made, 'cause I won't lie, I miss you. But that's the price I have to pay. Because although we had the best days of our lives, some things they just don't last, and other things don't feel right. Because although we had the best years of our lives, some paths move so distant, and some sparks lose their light. Wait now, between two different things. Yeah, I'm thinking too much, I'm bursting at the seams. Tell me I'm not lost out at sea. Tell me that you're listening to me, feeling misplaced. Someone rescue me. Someone rescue me. Someone take me. I'm floating. Someone save me. I'm
Up in the dark so you would know that times like these are here to show. You can do things for me and more. I got your back, just take things slow. Yeah. I'll bring everyone to show that I want your heart and more in my own life. I'll tell everyone there's no stopping us. Can I have you for the rest of my life? Rest of my life. Rest of my life. Up in the dark so you would know that times like these are here to show. You can do things for me and more. I got your back, just take things slow. Yeah. Wanna take my hand and get close. Understand, I know how things flow. Please just take my word and think you know. We stay up all night, bright and know. 'Cause all of the waves, they keep chasing after me. Even though we are out of reach, I can feel the water on my feet. The things that you said to me, they will grow inside the make-believe. I am still dancing on the feelings that you gave me. I am still dancing on the feelings that you give me.
All right, we'll move with the solution of this challenge. I do want to leave enough time for the last one because it's the spiciest. So let me just use this. Okay. So when you connect to the challenge, you have a few options. One of them is the source code. So the entire source code is given here because it's pretty rare that you can exploit a deserialization problem without knowing what's actually running. In this case, you have to do a bit of code review to kind of figure out what is the exact goal of this script. And the thing that's to notice is that the condition for the program to show the flag is to actually get all of the correct answers on the storage array, which contains the questions being asked. But as the comments at the top says, students complain they can't get any answer right. If you have some math, I guess, skills, you'll notice that this equation doesn't have any solution. So with the serialization and deserialization that the program does, you kind of have to figure out a way to exploit this. And usually, I think the best way to exploit a challenge like this is to just take the source code and throw it inside just an environment so that you can play with it. Success. So in this case, we saw that we would need to get success on every question. So what we can do is instantiate a question. Now, as you can see, it doesn't have success yet in this thing, but it has a method to actually give it some success. So now if we print the question, it has success. And I guess the other bit that I haven't explained is the import export. Yeah. So what it's going to do to deserialize your input is that here it's going to read whatever you input, is going to base 64 decode it, and then it's going to throw it in Marshall load. And the same way it's going to here, it's going to dump it. So it's going to dump the array and then base 64 it, and so that you can export it and kind of import it. So here our goal is to build some kind of input that we can throw in here, which would give us hopefully right questions. So yeah, I have a question here which has a success, so I would want to feed this into this program. So what I'll do is create my own array with a question that has some success, and I'm going to Marshall dump this. So now my successful question is serialized, and I can base 64 encode this. I actually have to write it correctly and require base 64, which will give me this payload. And if I try to import this, here we have the first flag. Now there's 3 different solutions that I know to this challenge. This was my intended one. If you did anything other than that, I wasn't aware. But they are all valid, so you got the flag. If you have other solutions, please post them. It's fun to look at. And with that, we're going to move to the second one. I don't have a lot to say in terms of tricks and tips in terms of this one. But here's a few things about how you can explore dynamically Ruby, which might be useful for the second and third challenges. The first one is this object space, each object class thing. What this allows to do is to ask Ruby, give me the list of all the objects currently defined. And in this case, we're asking for all the class objects. So we'll be listing all of the class that are defined currently in the runtime. So this might be useful if you're looking for a specific class to deserialize. In Ruby, you can ask like, what methods does a object accepts? And you can do that using methods or public methods. If you have a class object, you can call instance methods. It's going to list you the methods that you can call on an instance of that class. And usually, since in Ruby everything is an object, every object method will be also in this list, in the list of methods of every object. So you can do minus object methods, and that will remove the object inherited methods. And Yeah, that's pretty useful. I guess we can just show a bit what this looks like. So everything is an object, so even integers. So if we list the methods that are available on the number 1, 2, 3, this is what it looks like. And if we remove the object methods, we get a slightly shorter list with only what's actually defined on the integer here. And the last one is if you know a method on an object, you can call the method to get a reference to the method object. And that way, it will tell you where this function is defined, in which file, and in which line. If it doesn't work, it probably means that this is a native method, so it's written in C, so it doesn't have like a Ruby file attached to it. But again, this is also something useful. Yeah, I saw that you found the other solutions in the chat. That's exactly the other that I had in mind that were found at NordSec. Great. So yeah, with that, let's just try to work on the second challenge. Here you can notice that the setup is a bit different. You don't have a condition to fulfill to get the flag. So it is expected that you gain remote code execution through that. And I'm gonna let you try to figure that out.
which we cannot see. They still shine if we disbelieve. Lonely gems in the canopy, burning bright, just like you and me. Glowing embers of our distant hearts, tied together as we drift apart. We cannot escape our gravity. When we collide, will you remember me? You could say I'm a stranger, and I can see that's true. But if all we had is each other, then it's all we have to lose. And I believe in you.
Bend over backwards and over again. I'm jumping through hoops, so you don't have to. Making you smile as long as I can. Storm clouds are coming, and it's best if you prepare. But if we get tomorrow, I promise I can try. Give you love to borrow, if just to get us by. And sometime when you're ready, I'll soften up the blow. Our love was never made to last, and I don't wanna I let you hear music and covered your bruises. So if we get tomorrow, I promise I can try. Give you love to borrow, and just to get us by. Sometime when you're ready, I'll soften up the blow. Our love was never made to last, and I don't wanna give you back to hold on to. To hold on to. To hold on to.
Let me show you how everything's supposed to be a better place. I just want you to trust my fate. I don't want to choose a common way. Take a breath and tell me you're okay. Tell me something that says you won't go away. I'm gonna make a better place for you to stay. Take a breath and tell me you're okay. Give up. I like your now you never. It's hard when I'm like us. No answer, it's just us. Let me show you how everything's supposed to be a better place. I just want you to trust my fate. I don't want to choose a common way. I hope you never give up. You're feeling like it's corrupt. I'll tell you it's not just luck. It's hard work right from the start. Darling, you know I'm a bit tired or more. You want me to stay far away for sure. Every morning, know all of my thoughts. Yet I'm tired, but I'm so tired. But grab me tight, shake me away from you, baby. I'm tired. I don't want to feel so ill. Give me your hand, darling, just shine for me. I'm so tired. I wanna leave it. Nothing gonna help 'cause I'm so really tired. Really tired. Really tired. Darling, I know that I have to go, but I wanna stay close for sure. Every evening I know all my thoughts. You're my island soul, but I'm tired, so grab me tight, shake me away from you, baby. I'm tired. I don't want to feel so ill. Give me your hand, darling, just shine for me. I'm so tired. I wanna leave my skin. Nothing gonna help 'cause I'm so really tired. Really tired. Really tired. And I know this feels so wrong, wrong. It's all in my soul, and I wanna scream more. Oh, I wanna scream, but grab me tight, take me away from here, baby. I'm tired. I don't want to feel so ill. Give me your hand, darling, just shine for me. I'm so tired. I wanna leave my skin. Nothing gonna help 'cause I'm so really tired. Really tired. Really tired. I'm so tired. I feel so bright, I feel so gifted, I feel so high, I feel so lifted. By my side is where you're sitting, in my life is where you fit in, yeah, yeah. I never thought that I would get this far. I wanna drive around in the nice cars, I wanna forget about my scars and just have a good night. I smoke something down, I drink something down. I'm feeling it now, I'm feeling it now. I could say it out loud. When I see you, my heart goes whoa, yeah. Whoa, my heart.
my frame of mind. My heart is stuck in a loop of your rhythm and right. I tried to replace you with something new, whilst my body drives heartbreak along the ground, dancing about the idea of you, whilst you decide if I belong to lost and found. You know I'm dying to reach out to you. I'm trying but you can't see, 'cause say my calls never come through. Why can't you just hear me? I'm crying 'cause I can't feel you. My heart's sinking to my feet. I'm lying 'cause I can't touch you. Why can't you just hear me? It seems to have impact on me. I feel pain every time you cry. You say you'll be back before I know it. What you always lie. I tried to get on with somebody that's not you, whilst I hide the pain that sits before my eyes, dreaming about the idea of you, whilst you decide if I fall or if I fly. You know I'm dying to reach out to you. I'm trying but you can't see, 'cause say my calls never come through. Why can't you just hear me? I'm crying 'cause I can't feel you. My heart's sinking to my feet. I'm lying 'cause I can't touch you. Why can't you just hear me? You know I'm dying to reach out to you. I'm trying but you can't see, 'cause say my calls never come through. Why can't you just hear me? I'm crying 'cause I can't feel you. My heart's sinking to my feet. I'm lying 'cause I can't touch you. Why can't you just hear me?
When I'm broken down and lying in bed, you lie beside me through it all. If I shut you out when you let me in, you wouldn't tell me I was wrong. I wanna be the one to say I love you more. Wanna take you somewhere we could just. 'Cause just let go.
y'all. Those chords. Funky. Yeah, let's jack to this one, y'all. Let's forget about the fact to this one. Release the energy inside you to this one. Let go of your worries and stress to this one. Cause this is the one that will make you excel. That groove. Funky. Those chords. Fly. Yeah.
called you tonight. I've been thinking this for too long. Send a message, you don't reply. I'll keep looking for you, even if it's wrong. I'm sitting all alone in my room. You're stuck so hard in my head. I don't care if there's no chance. I need to find you. I need to know. I need to know. I need to know if I'm still in your heart. I called you tonight. I've been thinking this for too long. Send a message, you don't reply. I'll keep looking for you, even if it's wrong. Sitting all alone in my room. You're stuck so hard in my head. I don't care if there's no chance. I need to find you. I need to know. I need to know. I need to know if I'm still in your heart. If I'm still in your heart. I need to know if I'm still in your heart. I'll try stop to know if I'm still in your heart. I'll try speed up to find myself back in your heart. I'll try stop to know if I'm still in your heart. I'll try speed up to find myself back in your heart. If I'm still in your heart.
Okay, so we'll move on with the solution of this challenge. As I said, the third one is a bit spicy, so I want to leave you plenty of time for it. Yeah, I think a few people got stuck into the behavior of the or equal in Ruby. Yeah, I guess I should have explained it. TLDR. If the instance variable, for example, b here, is not already defined on the instance, it's going to calculate whatever is on the right side and then assign it to the instance variable. And if it's defined, it's just always going to return the value. So that's kind of why you were seeing sometimes operation objects that had like nothing in them or that were empty and very sad. That's because the instance variable were not calculated yet, and they end up being calculated as part of the call to answer here, who's gonna like here it's gonna result A, here is gonna result B and operator, and all of the instance variable will get assigned once answer is called. All right. So let's jump into the challenge. So yeah, as mentioned at the beginning, there's no like condition to get the flag here, so you kind of had to exploit Ruby a bit more to get some interesting behaviors out of it. My intended solution was kind of like to just open up Ruby and yeah, we'll do as the first one and just paste the module right into it. That's not the right code. Here, I'll just take the operation class, SAS. All right, so I'm going to create an operation. Now, if I look at this operation, has no instance variable. If I call answer, it suddenly has all of the instance variable. So if I was to call answer again, it would not actually recompute any of the other instance variables. So that's one thing that we have to keep in mind to build a payload, and that's kind of one of the gotchas, is if you don't undefine the answer on the object, it won't recompute this, so it won't execute this interesting bit, which, as a side note, if there's ever this kind of code in a Ruby application and you can control the method and the first argument, it's pretty much game over, as we'll see. So if I just take a look at the public methods of this operation object to be able to know which method I can send through this public send. Okay, I'm gonna list them like this. So there's quite a few things. A lot of stuff again inherited from object. But I guess if you do a lot of CTF, or maybe it's just me, but seeing eval is very, very triggering. It's like I want to call it, and let's just look up the documentation of this. Yeah, let's take this one. Okay, so eval evaluates a string containing Ruby code. So yeah, it's basically just eval. So that can be useful. Let's just try it. So let's say we take a random object, an integer again, called instance eval on it, and then pass in a string. I'll just put success, and it puts success. So yeah, this just evolves stuff. So that's a pretty interesting method, isn't it? So to build a payload, I'll actually just create a new operation that is empty. I'll make sure that A is defined, and I'll instance variable set. I'll set the instance variable manually for the operator. So in this case, I would want this to be instance eval. And I would want to have the first argument to be some Ruby code. So in this case, I'll just start bash through a system. Now, if we look at the object, what it looks like. So right now you can see there's no answer being defined. So it's going to recompute the answer. And when it's going to do that, it's going to, well, if I look at the source code again, A is going to be equal to an integer. We don't really know, we don't really care what it is. operator is going to be instance eval, so it's going to send instance eval to this first object, and the first argument here, B, will be system bash, so it should run bash. Now we just need to serialize this, so I'll require OX, put the operation into it, and I'll dump this, so that gives us this kind of payload. Now we just need to base 64 it. I'll use strict encode 64, so there's no new lines. Yeah, I guess that's what I have to do. If I just import it, well, if I write this correctly. All right, so now we filled in our funny question into the program, and if we ask for the next question, it's going to ask us, what is 86 instance eval system bash? I don't know, but it looks like a shell to me. So that way we can just get the flag. And yeah, that was it. I saw some solution involving putting file as the value of A, and like, wait, what was it? Flag, yeah, file as A, operator as read, and B as the flag. And like reading the answer off the serialized output. That's pretty cool. I guess can we try that? Okay, I don't have the same setup. We won't try that. Yeah, I want to move quite quickly to the next challenge because it's a lot more involved. And to, I guess, give you the main difference between this challenge and the previous one, as you can see in the case of the answer method, is that we don't control the first argument to the method that's being called on the object. So we only can call a method that doesn't have any argument. And usually that's not very interesting. There's not a lot you can do with that. But as it turns out, there is stuff you can do. And you kind of have to figure out what object here you can put. And this is where we're getting kind of pretty deep into property-oriented programming. So in the first two challenges, we kind of did that already. We modified properties and we changed the behavior of the program. It was intended to be doing, either in the first case, it was supposed to be impossible. In the second case, it really wasn't intended to be running instance eval or whatever. So for example, in this case, there's a deserialization of user input. And the program might be expecting an intended class here who responds to the method kickoff that does pretty much nothing. But the challenge of property-oriented programming is to find other classes that are defined in the environment and try to chain them together in a way that can result in other interesting behavior. So for example, if say this program had two other classes, template engine looks like a really fun gadget. It evaluates straight up the instance variable compile code. But we cannot really serialize this and put this here because this class just doesn't define the method kickoff. So when this code would execute, it would not really work. But luckily, this program also provides us with a proxy class with a method missing. This in Ruby just means whatever you're calling on me, it will be the fallback basically. So whatever method that's not defined on the class, it will end up in being called in method missing. So in this case, it sends a method to an object. And yeah, maybe if we chain both of these in such a way that suddenly kickoff will be invoked on this proxy class instance, which will be called by the method missing. And then we can control the object and method here. So we can set the object as an instance of a templating engine. And the method, well, we'll put it as result. And in our templating engine instance, we can set some Ruby code that we would control. So we went from a very program that expected certain kind of behaviors to something else completely different. Now it is challenging to find these classes. So I have like 2 tricks for you to build those payloads. The first one is a Ruby feature called autoloading. It allows to autoload a file when a constant is referenced. And this might be useful if in a certain file there's a library that's being loaded that you would be interested in to put into your payload. So for example, in this case, this file is requiring base64. It's printing autoload when it is loaded, and it defines the class autoload_me. So here on the left of the first thing, we'll define the autoload statement. And then we just try to reference the base64 constant, and it doesn't exist yet. But then if we unserialize an object, which has a random instance variable with a reference to the class autoload_me, which is the symbol here, it will suddenly load the file, and suddenly base64 is also in scope. So this is something that you might be interested into looking into. The other feature, since the third one is using OJ provides a class that is called OJBag. It is fairly common to see this kind of setup in Ruby, where you have an instance variable and then a method that is called, and then it returns an object and then another method. Instead of instantiating the actual real objects the program expects these method to return, you can just pass it an OJBag. And this way you can kind of traverse the object without having to worry about the inner implementation or if these classes have getters or anything to get to an interesting value. So these are 2 tricks that can help you to solve the third one. Now, I think I'll just go straight ahead and talk about the hint, because this challenge really wasn't solved that much at NorthSec, and it's fairly hard. So there's one thing in Ruby that's loaded, and it's the Ruby gem. So a gem is the package manager by Ruby. And in there, there's a lot of interesting gadgets. So yeah, open up this. Well, you can either just do it straight in the console and look at the files from the file system, or I personally prefer looking at it in GitHub. Be mindful that not everything you will see in this repo will be directly referenced. So try to have your interactive Ruby interpreter on one side and try to see if classes are loaded or not, and kind of get a sense of what you can do with those classes. So yeah, no, that's not it. All right. So yeah, that's the last challenge. Good luck.
the stars tonight. Found myself a washing colored light. It felt like spirits had awakened me. This carnival of animals had taken me. They danced around me and they took my hand. Whispered, close your eyes and understand. And when I felt the change, it startled me. This carnival of animals is part of me, 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 part of me. Close your eyes and understand. When I felt the change, it startled me. This carnival of animals is part of me, 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 I took a walk among the stars tonight. Found myself a washing colored light. It felt like spirits had awakened me. This carnival of animals had taken me. They danced around me and they took my hand. Whispered, close
Welcome.
I'm terrified and loving it. Want no regrets to keep me up at night. Feel so alive and loving it. Had to survive, so I finally learned to fight. Laughter, we cry for the fun of it. Now I finally see the light. Don't wanna waste a single minute. Now I finally have you, got you by my side. Let's forget all the repeat mistakes. It's just together again. So let's hit the ground running. Yeah, let's hit the ground running. Yeah, yeah, let's hit the ground running. Yeah, so let's hit the ground running. Yeah, it's a beautiful ride. It's a beautiful night. Hit the ground running. Yeah, so let's hit the ground running. Oh yeah.
I can feel your energy when you're looking back at me. Through the crowd I see your eyes, they're like stars beneath the sky. Can we call upon our friends and dance until the end? Can we stay right here forever? 'Cause we're finally all together. You're supposed to feel hopeless when you're surrounded. For me, it stops the hypnosis. My feet are finally grounded with you. You're supposed to feel hopeless when you're surrounded. For me, it stops the hypnosis. My feet are finally grounded with you. I can feel your energy when you're looking back at me. Through the crowd I see your eyes, they're like stars beneath the sky. Can we call upon our friends and dance until the end? Can we stay right here forever? 'Cause we're finally all together.
Set it off, let your body feel the rhythm groove. Feet moving, your body turn into a wave. Let it go, you gotta let it go. Feel the rhythm moving through you. Oh na na la la, oh oh oh. Sending out that loving vibe. Oh na na la la, oh oh oh. Sending out that loving. You know you feel it, electric is in your body, babe. We come together to dance away all our inner
I'm the only one alive who get me to the other side. The other side. You feel like the world is changing, spinning round and rearranging. Just hold on tight, you'll be alright. upon a time we were both happy. Everything was fine, then suddenly it leave. I was left behind, broken in pieces. Then you'd reappear. Sometimes we all feel a little afraid. We don't put our emotions on display. But I've gotta be strong. And I don't wanna know if you feel it too. Your chances are all gone. And I don't need you anymore, Try to toe the line, make you wanna stay. Asking myself why you keep going away. Don't want more goodbyes, so I've gotta say that although I've tried, sometimes we all feel a little unsure. We don't really know what we're here for. But I've got to move on. And I don't wanna know if you feel it too. Your chances are all gone. And I don't need you anymore. we'll be alright. When we're together, I'll hold you tight. When we're together, we'll be alright. When we're together, we'll be okay. Be okay. Be okay. Be okay. Come back to me. When we're together, we'll be alright. When we're together, I'll hold you tight. When we're together, we'll be alright. When we're together, we'll be okay.
All right, we'll move to the solution. Yeah, I think a few people got stuck on. Okay, I was just hearing myself. A few people got stuck on the where to get started, where to look at. There's a lot to look at actually, so we'll just unpack this. So yeah, there's no library in this challenge other than OJ being loaded. There's nothing else. You can only send a method to an object. That's not really interesting. So the goal of the challenge was to find a class that could be deserialized, which would, again, divert the code flow and hopefully get us a shell. To do that, we'll be using the object space trick that I listed in an earlier slide. And this will list every class that is defined currently in the Ruby environment. Keep in mind that like some classes, such as ERB here, are used by the interpreter, so they're not really interesting in terms of the challenge. But you can just go through this list and try to look for something that sounds interesting. Errors are probably not interesting. Thread, not really. But you can see that like gem comes a few times. And I think if I go back down here, there's some that sound actually really interesting. Which one? I guess resolver could be interesting. Git set. There's like reference to Git is kind of odd to have by default loaded in Ruby. So this was kind of the hint towards Ruby gems. Now, as far as the intended solution, I use GitHub a lot to search for bugs because it's right there and there's a search and it's pretty useful. So to find a gadget in Ruby gem, all I did was search for eval, and I just looked at what this thing does. Now, as I said on the chat, you are looking for files that are in the lib directory here. Bundler is another gem inside the gem, so we're not really interested into that. So yeah, we're looking for evals here that could involve some kind of instance variable that we could deserialize. Since we can only send a method without arguments, we have to find also a method that doesn't have arguments, otherwise it won't work. So nothing on this page. Nothing here. I don't know if I missed the one that I'm looking for. Okay, yeah, that's the one that I'm looking for. Okay, is there any other ones? We have this one, which is pretty obviously a nice gadget to have. And yeah, we'll just look at those two. Look at this one first. So here we have a method in this class which doesn't take arguments, so that's great. We see that it's going to read a file from an instance variable in path and then just eval it. So if we had a file dropped on the server, maybe through a shell from the second challenge, or maybe reading stdn, this could be a solution. I don't think reading stdn works because of the way the challenge is set up, but this could be a solution. But we'll be looking at this one. So ensure loadable spec in Ruby gem installer. First of all, let's just look at if this class is defined in our environment. So gem installer, if we just type that, I guess, yes, I guess it returned, yeah, okay, so it is defined. And if it can look at its instance methods, and we'll remove the object methods here. So yeah, we have all these methods, and we have the method that has eval in it, which is ensure loadable spec. So in order to exploit this, it needs to return code from spec to Ruby for cache. Let's look at what is the method spec. So it is coming from instance variable, so that's great. And then it's calling spec on it. And then in our ensure loadable spec, we would have to return to Ruby cache, and this whole thing would get evolved. So yeah, that's the trick with OJ bag here. We'll be using an OJ bag inside the package instance variable to set the spec method, and then the to Ruby cache to our Ruby code. and this code will get evolved. So let's try to do that. So I'm going to allocate an instance of gem installer. I don't like what the terminal is doing right now. Okay. And we'll try to set our OJ bag. So we call this package. Do we have OJ in scope? Let me load OJ. Okay. We'll create a new bag. Now we have to specify in this package spec, and we'll return another OJ bag here, which here will return to Ruby for cache. And this thing will be running Ruby again, so we'll do another instance of system bash because having a shell is fun. Now if we call package.spec.to Ruby for cache, it returns our very special string. So if we put this inside the gem installer object, so instance variable set, here we have to set package to our very special package. All right, so it is set, and we can test if it works by just calling ensure loadable spec, and it dropped into my system in a shell. So yes, it did work. Cool. Now, how do we fit this in the challenge? What I'll do is probably copy the code from the challenge itself. Yeah, so I'll bring the question into my interpreter. I'll create a new question. I'll instance variable set. And I'll set the type of this question to be ensure loadable spec, so that here, this is what the method is going to be sent to the array instance variable, and in this array is going to be our gem installer object. Okay, so now I can set the package to that. Wait, no, that's array. And then object. Is that what I want? Okay, I guess we can try it out by just calling answer to see if it's going to actually execute the thing, and it did. Cool. So now, as earlier, if answer is already defined, this code is not going to be run. So we have to like undefine the answer. So I'm going to, I'm not sure how I would do that. Maybe instance eval. Okay, so this works. So I can just set answer to nil again, and it's gonna have to recompute the whole thing. Okay, so now we can just dump this array of questions, which will be dropping into the challenge, which gives us this cute payload. And we need to base 64 this. Strict encode 64. Now, assuming I didn't mess this up, we can import this payload and ask for the next question, which is, what is ensure loadable spec on this gem installer instance? It is a shell. And we can get the flag like that. Now, I've heard many solutions from this challenge, in fact. Some of them involving multiple imports to modify the state of Ruby, to use autoloads and to drop files even. Yeah, there's a lot of things to do with it. So if you want to look at it at a later time, feel free to do it. I encourage you to do it. I think it's pretty interesting. And yeah, with that, we've made it through all of the challenges. I guess the last thing I would want to say is have a look at these resources. I think they are, I guess, the latest research known to about Ruby deserialization. And as I just mentioned in the chat, this top one is the last known universal RC deserialization gadget in Ruby, but it was fixed. So there's no gadget that you can use right now. So this is why this challenge exists. I wanted to challenge NordSec participants into trying to discover a gadget chain on their own, which, you know, it doesn't sound trivial. And this last one is just some other earlier research about Rails, which is a very common exploit. And yeah, with that, thank you all for sticking around and solving the challenge and doing some Ruby and deserialization stuff. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, I don't know what's going next after.
Yeah, no, thanks, Benoit. Very interesting. Can you show us the let's say the serialized but before base 64 encoding again on your screen, if you
Yep.
don't mind, so we
Yeah,
can
sorry.
go just slowly through it.
Boy,
I'm curious. I was
do I have it here? Yeah. I can do it again, I guess.
what we see right now is the slide deck. Yeah. Shows all the shells.
Yeah, you should see a shell now. Or maybe you can try another solution, but
Now we see your screen. Now I was curious about the dependencies on objects and like the overloaded array. Like it, we kind of chatted about it a little bit. Weren't sure if this was kind of something that needed to be touched on. And I like the so on. I never used the ERB except to assemble payloads, but for exploration, I like the way you did it, and I think it's very very interesting. I think the workflow is even more important than the write up, right? It's like the steps.
yeah, and these kind of tricks, you know, it really helps to be comfortable with Ruby in terms of exploring it and knowing what it's doing in the background. And yeah, to Ruby for Dash.
Do you know how many points was this at NordSec?
4 points.
4 points. Did you had the other two, or it was just this one?
The second one was worth 2, and the first one was worth 1.
So it was a level up of like you get to know what you're looking at eventually, and
yeah, kind of. I did it in reverse actually. So like this last one is what I intended to present at NordSec, but I thought it was a bit
rough.
yeah, a bit rough, a bit like, you know, throw in your face kind of. So I thought doing those earlier challenges would be interesting because we don't really see this kind of challenge. And given that there's no known universal gadget anymore, I thought it was interesting to bring this here.
Yeah. No, it's
Did I do this right? Unsure, loadable. I did. Okay, so yeah, here we have the object again as built to run bash. And do I have origin scope? I can dump it. Oh, wait, I have to actually redo the question.
sorry.
Okay. We want to set, what do we want to set? Array, the object, and the type. Yeah, I think that would be it. Answer. Yeah, that drops in a shell.
So serialize that. That's the serialized form I'm curious about.
Yeah, this is what it looks like here.
Oh, it's a bit small. Okay, success type. So type is this array.
Yeah, so like the array here kind of becomes the gem installer object that we specified. And then this question class will allow us to send the entry loadable spec method. And in this method, we now like end up being in this class, which will look for the package spec to Ruby cache for Ruby code to execute. And then it's just going to revolve it at this point. So yeah.
And what's the interaction with the package? So array is so a package is part of the array. Maybe you just said it. I was like looking. You were not full screen, and I struggled. But so so object gem installer, and then package part of the array.
The package part is an instance variable of the class of gem installer.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, this is where it's coming
So
from. So
in the array, it's like it's side by side to the other one. Slap.
no, in fact, there's the array only has one question, and in this question,
No, but the array
here.
member, yeah.
Yeah, so inside we have our gadget, basically from Ruby gems.
But if you look at the serialized format, you see
Yes.
that there is the gem installer and then the package.
Yeah. So this is that. So spec, is that it?
So basically, it's how the object is encoded or embedded by
Okay.
OJ.
Yeah, it must be that like in gem installer, it might have assigned spec to package.spec and like it defines spec here. Or no, never mind.
But they're not.
Well, okay.
They're not directly. Okay.
I might be tired a bit.
No,
So yeah,
but I mean,
object
you showed this to us, so it worked.
package
But
that spec and then to Ruby cache. Like that's the whole chain right there. So it would be like from question to like instance variable get at array. And then it would traverse again to the same thing, package spec to Ruby for cache. So it's not a very long chain, but yeah, finding the bits and put them together was the challenging bit.
no, but yeah, it's interesting. No, to me, it's the way that is represented in the serialized format that confused me, I guess. But yeah, so you basically have a something that says that it is an object, and then you will have like the chain in the array, but this would then be coerced, I guess, into a symbol, and then that would be called by the send, because it's the whole array that is called that send is called upon, but and then it would call type on that whole chain.
Yeah. So type here would be ensure loadable spec. So it's the method that we're trying to call.
Yes.
So it's the kickoff method. An array is not necessarily an array. It can be anything, but in this case, we put it into this specific object.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We can take questions, I think, either on the chat or people can ask. We can like give voice, I guess. Otherwise, oh, we have a screenshot of the final payload. Interesting. So yeah, I don't know how much you're willing to talk about it, but how did you come up with these challenges?
I was doing fuzzing on OJ at work, and we found one bug, and I was so happy about it that I found a crash that was not exploitable. That I ended up looking for application which would be unserializing objects with OJ and like with user input. And I found an app, and like I was happy that I could make the app crash with the crash that I just found through fuzzing. But then I learned that this library actually was an object marshaller, so it allowed to unserialize object, and it was the only purpose of the library. And yeah, it got me into digging into gadget building and stuff like this to eventually come up with this challenge.
And like, what's the in Ruby? Because Ruby seems very, different than we used to hear about Java's deserialization issues, and .NET maybe a little bit less, but still. What's the defense mechanism for Ruby? Like, how can you prevent this kind of abuse from a developer standpoint?
Don't unserialize untrusted inputs, I guess. Yeah, there's not that much you can do, especially with those libraries. They don't have a mechanism built into them to prevent unserializing. I think YAML, which is also vulnerable to object marshalling deserialization like this, you have safe alternatives to loading. So instead of just loading objects, you can just safe load. But yeah, most libraries don't really have that mechanism built in.
But like, I mean, in the world where Docker uses YAML and a lot of the HashiCorp tools uses JSON, can it really, isn't there like a mode, like, as soon as it's an object, I I'm not interested. I don't want it in the libraries.
Yeah, it would have to be done at the application level. The libraries don't support this. So yeah, you would have to actually implement checks to make sure that the return object is indeed the object you're expecting. But it's a very common pattern in Ruby to trust duck typing. So whatever object's being returned is kind of trusted that this object will handle whatever method we're sending it to. Yeah,
which creates a bigger, or which is part of the problem, right? But so let's say I'm making up a fake example, but let's say you are you provide you're a website provider, and people can configure their own website, and you allow them to do configuration. And how can you avoid problems like that?
Oh, okay. So like, yeah, let's say you just wanted to parse JSON, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would use the JSON library, not or actually in OJ. Okay, that's not true. In OJ, you can load and you can change the mode. Let's say like the first argument would be the string you're serializing. It just so happens that the default OJ mode is object, but you can change it to any other mode which is safe. It would unserialize JSON perfectly fine.
Okay.
But yeah, that's for OJ, and I think OX I had to do like parse object explicitly to request that I'm deserializing objects.
So there is a way to pass data safely
Yes, of course,
using
yeah.
those flexible and language independent structures. It's just that by default OJ load is will accept objects, and
Yeah.
this is not a good advice. As soon as you are serializing objects, you should be like, it should be a red flag, I guess.
Yeah, especially in a web application, because I think the last blog post I listed on the last slide, it's pretty much game over if you have an unserialized in Rails, for example, because there's just so many gadgets everywhere. So yeah, you have to be careful about that.
And I mean, the also the search that you did on eval on the Ruby gem, which is imported by default, God knows why, is pretty scary. Like, how many evals do you need to write modern software? That's kind of crazy. But at the same time, Ruby does have a tendency of having Ruby used for configuration languages. So if, like, for example, rake files, if you can't if you need to parse a rake file, then you need basically to eval
Yeah.
Ruby. So I guess that's the problem.
Yeah, that's a fairly common pattern.
Like setup.py in Python and so on.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure where it's coming from though, but it's useful, but it has its downsides of not being statically very analyzable. So you have to evolve them.
Did we get any question? Let's look. Benjamin is interested in PHP deserialization. He talked to me about it.
There's a question about if that's common in applications to unserialized data like this. I don't know. To be honest, it happens though. And in the case of OJ, it's if you look at it, it's a library that's meant to be a faster JSON. So it's kind of like in the small prints that it unserializes object by default because it was created for that reason. But you can see a lot of application dropping OJ instead of the JSON Ruby parser to speed things up, but they don't realize that this might be parsing untrusted input and thus allowing remote code execution on the application.
Another question I have, Benoit, would be, did you do any other challenges at NordSec this year?
I did. A lot of Ruby too. Yeah, I had this wicked PDF challenge, some old code that was vulnerable, some other weird Ruby things, yeah, a lot of Ruby. Library, yes. And
What was library?
library was a misconfigured rack middleware that's included by default in a lot of web application in Ruby. But it requires a specific reverse proxy configuration, which most applications don't put it. And it happens that if you're using internal path in Nginx and you have a local file include that's very specific in Ruby, well, in Rack and Rails and like the web stack that most application uses, it allows you to redirect the intended file read that the reverse proxy is supposed to send back to the client to something else, to like this internal block. So I used it in a way to get into the library administration using that bug.
Oh, was it like the way you explained it? It sounds like it's very difficult to find, but I guess there is a
It's very
scanner or
documented.
whatnot. Yeah, okay. It's
It's
very
read the
common. It's like
docs.
a debugging backdoor or something like that, right?
No, not really. It's like it has
No.
its uses, but it's only that it's there by default. And I think a lot of my challenges, they're not about vulnerable code. They're about misconfiguration. They're about maybe vulnerable code that you're not seeing right in your face. And yeah, all my challenges this year in NordSec were about this. And this one, yeah, was a misconfiguration. And if you just go through, read the documentation of the very obvious middleware that's being used in this application, you would see that it is not configured properly. So it's really read the docs.
Interesting. Do you have so Jan asks any good list of patterns to grep to find gadgets in Ruby?
Yeah, just anything that is sensitive. So anything that manipulates a file. So file would be interesting. Eval system, backticks. However else you would find bugs, I think in Ruby would be useful because in the end, there's no real simple tool to find them. And you kind of have to triage every time there's a dangerous function being used in a class and try to figure out if there's an instance variable being involved here. If yes, then maybe it can be used, but then it might be in a very weird method. So you kind of have to just take note of that and maybe use it later if you find another gadget that will allow you to call it. So yeah, search for random dangerous functions, I guess.
Cool, excellent. I had a little I spaced out a little bit because I was like thinking like how long do you hunt on stuff that and it gives you no result, right?
A lot.
How yeah, exactly. It must be sometimes difficult. And sometimes you must be in the shower and then like, oh, I think I have an idea and come back and poop.
Uh,
Maybe not.
Not really.
Eh,
I spend a lot of time on GitHub and just searching projects for stuff like this. And yeah, that's what I do.
Search function. But so this is part of your job. But so basically, you and feel free to say you can answer because it's going on the stream. But are you basically hunting for vulnerabilities instead of looking at your code base or at what people are trying against your stuff? You're going out on GitHub and actively hunting for bad code patterns.
Yes, well, in a sense, I'm doing that to protect our own applications.
Yeah, definitely.
The thing
For
in
sure.
Ruby is that I don't think there's that much research into it. I think it's kind of like it's there, and sometimes there's few articles going on, but I don't think there's that much hype into Ruby security. So there's
And
a
I
lot
think
of
I think
stuff.
pen testers struggle because it's
Yeah.
an unloved language. Metasploit. People are hate it because it's in Ruby and so on. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
so being unloved, it means that less researchers are spending their time through it, and it's because maybe the application security market uses Java or .NET, which is everywhere in enterprise code bases, and so because of that, Ruby or Python becomes niche languages for startups or for big web properties, but properties that are not pen tested by the same people that pen test enterprises, and so on.
Yeah, that's kind of my feeling. But there's also a problem that like there's Ruby and Node.js, for example, they have a very large ecosystem of packages and libraries and stuff like this. And I think there's just so much to look at. And when I search for bugs like this, I look at a specific application that we have, and I just look at what are the dependencies and try to look if there's anything in there. Because usually there's no one that looked at it in a security perspective. So it might be worth to take a look at it.
Even really popular packages, because you all have the stats on Ruby gems, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so too.
Okay, interesting. Ripe for bug bounties, I guess. Well, Benoit, thanks a lot for your generosity and your time. And I think this was really cool. I liked it a lot. Very dev oriented. The third one, I'll need to get another stab at it. I failed miserably, but I'm glad I got the first two that got me going. So I guess with this, we're gonna wrap up. And I wanted to say lastly, so we're always looking for presenters. Right now, it's easy. We hunt for the NordSec admins because NordSec was pretty recent, and I think it's a very interesting CTF with a lot of variety. So we can go in different directions from time to time. But if you have anything that you want to contribute or you want to present, do not hesitate to get in touch with us. Looking for a presenter is time consuming, and someone who have been through the format, I think it has chances of enjoying it more. But that said, the burden is on you. We'll find someone for next month. It's just we don't have one already. um, I also wanted to you to note that right after I shut up, we're gonna start playing Secret Hitler. So the website. This is basically the last message in the announcement channel on Discord, and so this is our first time. I hope that it's gonna be smooth and we won't have to do too much community management. I think not. We're a relatively small group, but so I think it should be fun. We'll have like 5-10 minutes to set up, but we'll get started quickly so that we don't go to bed too late. So Secret Hitler is a board game. For those who played Werewolf, it's very similar, but so it's conversation and arguing. But Secret Hitler is more it's it's very streamlined. It goes relatively quickly, keeps the conversation focused on the votes and so on. And there's some strategic element that is less present in Werewolf, where you sometimes just piss some people off. So I think it should be fun for those who want to try. So this is gonna happen probably over at the Benelux Virtuel or Common Table voice chat, not here, in just a few minutes. And I encourage that you share your webcam. Well, we did it at work like this. I think it's more fun to see people's reaction. We'll try like this. If it doesn't work, we'll shut it down. But it should go pretty easily. Based on the number of people here, I think we're gonna play one game at a time, not more than one. But let's coordinate on another on a channel less busy than Hackerspace, which we would like to keep more around the Montreal Hack main event. So yeah, I guess we should move to. I guess in order to have chat, so we missed. So in order to have chat, let's go and do that over at table one. And so thanks if you have ideas on format, anything we can improve, we are open for this. You saw some changes that Julien handled on the Twitch, and we are also we are streamlining our communications process in order to reach out to more people. I think we did reach out to more people than usual, but it was very nice outside in Montreal, and we're kind of getting deconfined. So I understand that there was less participation, but any advice will be really appreciated. And yeah, so thanks for your presence, and thanks again, Benoit, for being here. It was very cool. See you next month or in a few minutes.